Unfortunately, the world is full of bad people, and I'm talking about those who are ready to destroy the life of an absolutely innocent person for their own benefit. And this is the saddest thing. My wife and I had a relationship based on trust and mutual understanding. I allowed my wife a lot, but I did not expect what it would all result in. On Thursday, Bob sat at the table eyeing his bottle of Miller Lite. He had only bought a six-pack, anticipating that if things went awry in the next few minutes, he wouldn't want enough beer to become intoxicated. Upstairs, he heard the music stop, signaling that she was almost finished getting ready. Thursdays usually meant he worked late because it was his wife's girls' night out with her friends. His parents would babysit their daughter, Casey, while his wife enjoyed a few drinks with her female co-workers. Meanwhile, he would wrap up the week's paperwork, allowing him to leave early on Friday and spend more time with his family. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. He gained some control over his hectic schedule. His parents cherished time with their 5-year-old grandchild, and his wife relished some personal time to unwind and bond with friends. At least, that's what he had believed. As he heard her bustling around upstairs in the bathroom, his mind drifted back to the lunch he had with Vicky last Tuesday. On Tuesday, he pondered, I need to spend more time outside the shop, or perhaps check if they deliver these sandwiches because they're fantastic. He settled into a seat, keeping an eye on the door. Soon, he spotted a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Seeing her glance around, he stood up and waved. Catching sight of him, she made her way over. At 31, Vicky was the eldest among his wife's friends and his favorite. She was the only one married, possessing a natural charm that put everyone at ease without being a pushover. He couldn't deny her attractiveness, with her dark wavy hair and fair complexion. Though lacking in the chest department, she had a stunning face and endless legs. Her husband, Ron, adored her, and the feeling was mutual. Despite being married, she still garnered attention from other men as she pulled up a chair and joined him. Thank you for meeting me, Bob. I understand how busy you are with work, so I appreciate you taking the time. She spoke, her gaze fixed on his face. Well, it's no trouble, Vicky, Bob replied hesitantly. Though I must admit, meeting you here without Sharon feels a bit odd. I usually don't have lunch with attractive ladies unless they're my wife. But since you mentioned it's about Sharon, I'm all ears. I suppose you're planning a surprise for her birthday next month. Bob was taken aback by the sadness in Vicky's expression when he mentioned lunch, and even more so when he brought up Sharon's birthday. What was going on? Bob, I know you and Sharon share a special bond, and I've seen you together enough to recognize that. That's why I've come to you about this. It might strain my friendship with her, but if it helps salvage your marriage, I'm willing to take that risk. There's no easy way to say this, but Sharon has been seeing someone else for the past 3 months. Bob was stunned. It had to be a joke, a terrible one. He told Vicky as much. I'm really sorry, Bob, but this is serious. About 2 months ago, after you took on this project, Sharon's mood changed. She was grumpy at work and even quieter than usual when we went out. After a few martinis, she opened up about missing you and feeling neglected. She expressed concerns about your relationship, feeling like you both were just going through the motions of being a middle-aged married couple, letting life pass you by. At that moment, the waiter interrupted to take Vicky's order. She requested a Cobb salad and an iced tea with lemon. Bob was stunned by the notion of his wife being unhappy. Over their 8 years together, he would have bet anything that Sharon would communicate if she was dissatisfied. He believed they were always honest about their feelings, even when they knew the other might disagree. Looking at Vicky, he asked the pressing question. Has she been unfaithful? He whispered. No, at least not that I'm aware of, and I think I would know. Your wife is usually very open. That's why her behavior surprises me. Bob, every woman I've talked to has echoed her sentiments. It's like how you guys joke about being tied down by marriage. When Sharon brought it up, we all reassured her. She's a great catch. You should cherish her and so on. Unfortunately, my sister was there that night. "What does your sister have to do with any of this?" Bob asked, suppressing his anger. "To be honest, my sister has a promiscuous reputation," Vicky replied, taking a sip of her tea as the waiter raised an eyebrow at her comment. "Anyway, my parents engaged in a pattern of infidelity. I'm uncertain who initiated it, but they sought revenge on each other consistently. At 17, I questioned why they stayed together, and they seemed baffled by my perspective, insisting that their love was paramount. This divergence affected my sister and me differently. I viewed cheating as a destructive force in relationships, while she believed it acceptable if love remained. Despite loving her, I find her perspective foolish." Returning to the narrative, my sister Gary suggested seeking romance elsewhere due to a lack of it at home. Disagreeing, I warned her. However, Hannah and Gail discussed the logistics of picking up men and keeping it clandestine, seemingly in a detached manner given their unmarried status. Sharon initially claimed she wouldn't betray anyone's trust, but I suspect my sister planted ideas in her mind. Bob inquired, "Why do you think that?" As doubts about her fidelity arose, he absorbed more details. Though unpleasant, he embraced the idea that knowledge equaled power. Because the following week, Luke Jonas and his friends unexpectedly joined us at the Red Horse Saloon. Sharon denied inviting him, but did mention our plans to try line dancing, inadvertently leading him there. Despite the intrusion, the group dynamic was enjoyable until Luke arrived. Now armed with a name, Bob reflected, "Knowledge is power." "Give me the lowdown on this Luke character," Bob snarled. Vicky's lips curled slightly at the edge, registering Bob's tone. She went on, "Luke Jonas is the company's flirt. He tries his luck with every woman, and those who show the slightest interest become targets of his charm. He doesn't care if they're married or not, or even if they're attractive. He just enjoys the pursuit. Your wife shut him down initially, but he started pursuing her again. It's no secret that if he faces more harassment complaints, he's out of a job. Your wife could stop his advances, but she's not. They've been getting cozy at lunch for a while now, chatting and giggling. I've tried talking to her, but she just gets defensive, claiming they're friends and that Luke understands her. When I asked how she'd behave if you were there, she blushed. But then she got angry, saying you wouldn't even notice. I backed off after that, but I've been keeping an eye on her. It seemed like things cooled down until about 3 weeks ago." Vicky's food arrived and she started eating, watching Bob for a reaction. Bob took a sip of his lemonade, his mind elsewhere. He felt hollow inside, struggling to focus. How could she think he wouldn't care about her flirting with another man? He'd never been overly jealous because he trusted her. But maybe he'd been too immersed in his work lately, neglecting their relationship. What had happened 3 weeks ago? Did he really want to know? For the next 5 minutes or so, they quietly ate while he processed her revelation. Undoubtedly, he felt anger. There seemed to be no justification for her closeness with another man, yet he could understand her reasoning to some extent. Perhaps if he had been more attentive, this situation could have been avoided. Apart from not disclosing her flirtatious behavior with the other person, she hadn't outright lied to him. While he acknowledged these omissions as lies, he believed they could move past it if she was forthcoming and committed to avoiding such situations in the future. He intended to have a conversation with her to hear her perspective. He felt hopeful that they could overcome this hurdle without any lasting damage, unless something significant had occurred in the past 3 weeks. So, how bad was it 3 weeks ago? He felt more grounded mentally now, ready to tackle the issue. She regarded him with sympathy. "Bob, that's where everything changed. 3 weeks ago, we all gathered again at the Red Horse Saloon to dance in line. Luke and his team came, and we all had a blast on the dance floor. Sharon drank more than usual, thanks to the fact that Luke had been buying her drinks all evening. She was pretty tipsy. I took her to the bathroom where I realized that she was more drunk than I thought. When she came out of the booth, she had underwear in her hand, which she was stuffing into her purse. I asked what was going on, and she mentioned that she wanted to feel liberated. Deciding that it was all because of the alcohol, I helped her back to our table. While I was about to take her home with Hannah and Gail, I noticed Sharon and Luke getting very close on the dance floor. The dancing in the queue was over, and the rest of the evening there was only sound on the jukebox. I saw her slip her underwear into Luke's pocket when the song ended. Unfortunately, so did everyone else in the bar. There was a whistle, and Luke seemed very pleased. Then he imprinted an overly intimate kiss on her lips, while his friend recorded it on his mobile phone. I wanted her to stop it, but she wouldn't let up. "Oh, Bob, I'm so sorry." She paused, watching his reaction. Bob's jaw dropped. He needed to leave immediately. "Excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom," he muttered, getting up from his seat and running inside. Once in the bathroom, he locked the door, rinsed his face with water, and gripped the sink tightly, trying to stay on his feet. He vividly recalled the evening in question. Sharon usually returned home around 11:30 a.m., but on that particular evening, she finally returned home at almost 2:30 a.m. Vicky called him and explained that Sharon was staying with her for a while because she had drunk too much alcohol. Vicky assured him that she would order a taxi when Sharon sobered up. This scenario had happened several times before, and Bob always appreciated how responsible Vicky and the girls were about not driving drunk. He had always considered mild intoxication as part of the pleasure of a night out, so he was genuinely not upset about it. He also recalled the events that unfolded when Sharon returned home that night. He remembered waking up to Sharon's kiss. After a few moments, he was completely ready for intimacy. "What more information do I need, Vicky?" he inquired. "Frankly, Bob, that's pretty much it. Recently, our girls' nights have been at Hannah's, involving wine and lingerie parties. At work, Sharon's been giving Luke the cold shoulder, despite his obvious interest in her. I thought it was over, but just yesterday I caught them in conversation. They clammed up when they saw me, so I'm clueless about what's going on. But I've had enough. I thought you should know, maybe you can intervene since she's not heeding her friends anymore." The waiter brought the bill. He snatched it up before she could and started pulling out his credit card. "I want to witness these two in action and perhaps give them a scare," he declared. "Sharon mentioned you guys are hitting the Red Horse Saloon this week. So, this Thursday when you go, I'll show up and observe from a distance." He trailed off as he noticed the shock on Vicky's face. "What did I say?" he inquired. "Bob, Hannah has an early doctor's appointment on Friday, and Gail's visiting her brother in Florida. If Sharon's going out on Thursday, it's not with us." She reached across the table, taking my hand. "I'm so sorry, dear," she said sadly. "I won't ask if you're okay, but here's my home phone number. Feel free to call any time to talk to Ron or me." Her husband was a marriage counselor, so speaking with him might be beneficial. "Vicky, I appreciate you sharing this with me. I understand it wasn't easy for you, but I truly believe you're showing your strength as a good person and a good friend. I'm unsure about what the future holds, but knowing the situation now allows me to take necessary steps. Thank you once more." With his gratitude expressed, he rose to depart, settling the credit card bill before exiting. Wednesday today marked a significant development in Bob's project. After securing pre-manufactured parts from a startup in Harrisburg, they could now accelerate the turnaround time by 2 months, even with unpredictable transport logistics. With just 2 more phone calls, they could finalize the plan 2 months ahead of schedule, saving the military millions. The anticipated cash bonus for Bob would be substantial, as would be the recognition of having his name associated with the project. He should have been as happy as could be, but instead, he found himself dreading going home to face what he knew he must. Bob had resolved to investigate the situation on his own. Aware that he couldn't access his wife's work email, he doubted they'd discuss anything sensitive there, given HR monitoring. He did check her Yahoo Mail account, but found nothing incriminating. She might have a separate account, but he'd only know by checking their home computer. Bob's lack of tech savvy was a hurdle. While the idea of installing surveillance cameras or voice-activated microphones seemed appealing, he had a different plan in mind for confronting her. All he wanted was more information to gauge how serious the situation was and what steps he'd need to take to salvage or end his marriage. Sharon had already fetched their daughter Casey from his parents and persuaded him to bring Chinese food home. When he texted her asking what she wanted, she replied, "After a decade together with 8 years of marriage, you should know what I like, babe." He couldn't help but tease in his response. "I just wanted to ensure you're still content with the usual." His phone chimed with her reply. "You're right. Get me an extra egg roll." Had it not been for the shocking revelation yesterday, he would have been thrilled to arrive home an hour early and simply spend time with his wife and child. Glancing at his watch, however, he reminded himself that prior to the project, this would have been considered 2 hours late. He also realized that he hadn't been home early with his family on a Friday since it all began. Coupled with the exhaustion and stress he carried even when at home, it was understandable why Sharon might feel neglected. Not that she had any justification for her actions. As he entered through the front door, he spotted his wife reaching for a wine bottle. He paused, admiring her silhouette. At 31, she was in her prime, her 5'7" figure boasting just the right curves. Even in the baggy sweatpants she wore, her tight ass was evident. With her hair pulled back into a ponytail, she turned around, flashing him a 1,000,000-watt smile. He couldn't help but feel incredibly fortunate to have her by his side. Then reality struck. "I'm really happy you're back, babe. How was your day?" she asked, moving closer to plant a gentle kiss on his lips. "Pretty good. We made a significant breakthrough with some supplies, so it looks like we might finish at least a month ahead of schedule. I know I've been preoccupied with this project lately, and I hate that I can't share the details with you due to confidentiality. But I want you to know that you and Casey mean the world to me, and I'll do everything I can to keep us safe," he said, locking eyes with her. Did he detect a hint of regret or guilt in her expression? Or was he simply searching for something? Today was one of those moments when he wished he could read people better. He was often described as straightforward, preferring plain and direct communication, and expected the same from others. While he knew his approach could sometimes come off as harsh, people usually appreciated his honesty once they got to know him. It had served him well for 34 years, and he saw little reason to change, until now. "Oh, darling," she responded, "we adore you immensely and completely understand. I do wish you could engage more with the family, though. I know it's temporary, but it warms my heart to hear you acknowledge that." She appeared on the verge of tears. Was her acting really this convincing? "So what does finishing the project early mean for you?" she inquired as she began unpacking the food containers. "Well, firstly, it entails a substantial pay bonus. I'm not sure of the exact amount until the project gets approved, but we're talking about a significant sum. Additionally, successfully managing our inaugural government project and excelling at it should attract more business to the company. Being the project lead may also attract attention from government recruiters. The higher-ups are aware of this, so I should be able to negotiate some favorable terms, assuming everything goes as planned." While speaking, he attempted to eat his sweet and sour pork with chopsticks, but it proved too cumbersome, so he switched to a fork. "Didn't I already mention all of this to you?" he inquired as he chewed on a piece of pork. "I don't recall, babe," she responded. "All I remember is you mentioning a big contract you couldn't discuss but said it would be worthwhile. Since then, we haven't really had a chance to talk." Her expression turned somewhat melancholic, but then she brightened up. "But it seems like I'll have my husband back soon." He glanced at her, sensing an opportunity to probe a bit. "So, which bar are you and the ladies planning to visit tomorrow night? Should I swing by after work to ensure everyone gets home safely?" he asked, aiming for a casual tone. "Oh, well, actually, we decided on the Red Horse Saloon for some line dancing. But I think we'll be finished before you finish work, she replied, her gaze shifting to her orange chicken as she spoke. His heart sank. At that moment, Casey finished her egg roll and requested him to read her stories. He cleared his plate, rinsed it in the sink, then scooped her up and led her to the living room. Over the next hour, he lavished attention on his daughter, reading story after story until she drifted off to sleep. From the sofa, he heard the gentle sound of his wife's snoring, and he observed her, peacefully curled up with her own book resting on her lap. Carrying his daughter, he ascended the stairs to her bedroom, where he tucked her in snugly. As he gazed at her, tears welled in his eyes, contemplating the challenges that lay ahead. He yearned for her to cherish these serene evenings with her parents rather than the tumultuous times that might be in store. Brushing away his tears, he descended to the couch where his wife lay asleep. He tenderly kissed her lips and covered her with a blanket to ward off the chill. Then he sought out her phone. Discovering it plugged into the wall beside their bed, he unlocked it and began scrolling through her messages. It didn't take him long to uncover what he was searching for. Looking back through their messages, he noticed they had started around 3 months ago. Him. Hi, beautiful. It was enjoyable seeing you and the girls out dancing last night. Her. Same here. Bob works late on Thursdays and the in-laws babysit so we can have some girl time. Him. Your husband is a good guy for letting you have some time out of the house, occasionally. Her. Yes, he's amazing. For the next few weeks, their texts remained fairly innocuous. Then came this exchange. Her. Vicky gave me a lecture today about our lunch breaks. I was angry, but she does have a point. I don't want people to get the wrong idea about us. Him. It's just harmless conversation. We're not doing anything wrong. Her. She asked if Bob would be okay with how we've been acting, and it got me thinking that maybe we're giving off the wrong impression. Besides, I shouldn't be confiding all my problems to another guy. I'm going to try talking to Bob. Him. I understand. But if you can't get through to him, you know where to find me. I'll even take you out to dinner if necessary. Just as friends. Bob didn't recall her mentioning anything about talking to him, but that might have been around the time he was dealing with the urgent need for food-grade, stainless steel for their project. He spent days searching for a supplier that could meet their quantity requirements. During that time, he was so absorbed in his task that he might not have noticed anything else. He presumed all her messages had been innocuous thus far. It was evident to him that the jerk was manipulating her. How could she not notice? He scrolled down to read the next exchange. Her. You have to return those today. Him. What do you mean? Duh. Her. You know perfectly well. My friends are furious with me right now, and I don't blame them. If Bob discovers how promiscuous I've been acting, he might leave me. Him. So you don't want me to show him the video? Her. What video? You can't let anyone at work see that. Him. Sam was there and he recorded it on his phone. I'll ensure he deletes it, but you'll owe me. Her. Fine. I can't risk losing Bob, especially after last night. Him. What happened last night? Her. That's none of your business. Him. Was he angry because you came home late and drunk? Her. Elmau. No way. Let's just say things got intense and leave it at that. Him. So dancing with me got you all excited for your husband? He should thank me. Her. You're being rude. Last night was amazing because Bob and I love each other. Now give me my underwear back and make sure that video is erased. Her. Damn, that makes me sound like a slut. Bob deserves better than me? Him. No. He is lucky to have you. He wasn't there to watch over you, was he? I'm sure he's a great guy, but you go out alone a lot. Her. I don't need anyone to watch over me. Just be the friend you claim to be and take care of what I asked, please. Him. Sorry. Of course I'll help you. And then you can treat me to dinner. Her. Just ensure no one sees that video and I'll do whatever you want. Nothing until last Monday. Him. I heard the ladies' night got called off. How about dinner? Her. Not a good idea, sorry. Him. Oh, come on, your husband will be at work and the girls are leaving you alone. Just one night out with a friend, and we can chat like we used to in the cafeteria. Besides, you owe me. Her. Fine, I'll meet you at the Red Horse at 8. Him. Nope. Let's meet at the TGIF in the Sheraton Hotel. They have great drink specials, and I don't want to shout over a bunch of drunk people. I'll be booking a room just in case we drink too much. Her. Fine, but this is just dinner between friends, and I owe you for ensuring that video never leaked. It's bad enough people at work heard about it. Him. Don't worry, I saw Sam delete the video. Someone else will do something scandalous soon and you'll be fine. See you at 8. There it was, likely the end of a marriage. How often do you see your wife agreeing to a date with another man at a restaurant, bar, in a hotel? How could this possibly turn out well? Didn't she realize that it could be about intimacy? He closed the text messages and put the phone back on charge. Undressing, he slid into bed alone. Sleep took a while to come. A Thursday. Descending the staircase, she adorned her customary little black dress reserved for their outings. Radiant, she paused at the foot of the stairs, catching sight of him seated at the table. Bob, I didn't anticipate your early return, darling, she faltered, her complexion paling. We need to converse, Sharon, his voice devoid of emotion. This could very well be the most pivotal conversation we'll ever have. Please, take a seat. Complying, she appeared apprehensive, reaching for his hand as usual, only for him to withdraw it. I'm aware there hasn't been any girls' night out. I know you've been rendezvousing with Luke Jonas behind my back, he began. Bob, let me explain. Her words were abruptly halted by the force of his fist slamming the table. Damn it, Sharon, listen, he bellowed. You don't get to speak until I've said my piece. Shrinking back, tears welled in her eyes as he gazed at her impassively, continuing his discourse. As I said, I'm aware that you got close to Luke during lunch. I noticed that you danced with him at the Red Horse Saloon and even went so far as to give him your underwear after a few dances. It seems that your meeting with me 3 weeks ago was caused by your feelings for him. Moreover, I know that you have a date scheduled with him tonight at the hotel restaurant, where a room is reserved for your boyfriend. Whether you were close to him is still unclear to me, but given the circumstances, I wouldn't be surprised. Sharon, you misled me by not telling me about Luke and your provocative dancing. You also lied to me about going out with girls. To be honest, I'm exhausted, and my trust in you is undermined. I'm not sure if I want to continue working on our marriage when your actions suggest that you probably don't care anymore. So, I'm offering you 3 options. He held up his finger. Option 1, you leave through that door and go meet your jerk of a boyfriend. Even if you two don't end up sleeping together tonight, this decision will mark the end of our marriage. There's no chance of me wanting to salvage it. He raised a second finger. Option 2, you and I stay here all night, and you attempt to persuade me to put effort into preserving our marriage. It's going to be a tough sell because I'm not inclined to believe anything you say. However, there's a possibility you could succeed because I still love you, and we have our child to consider. I'd estimate there's a 50% chance of me actively trying to save this. He raised a third finger. Option 3. You accompany me to meet your romantic interest tonight. You instruct him to refrain from any further communication or contact with you in my presence. Subsequently, you and I engage in a private conversation for at least 15 minutes. This decision will earn you the utmost respect and significantly enhance my willingness to invest in our relationship. If you have not entered into a close relationship with him, I assure you of my full commitment to the development of our relationship. However, if you entered into a close relationship with him, this is the only real option that can potentially save our relationship. Her expression turned to one of profound distress, as if she were on the brink of being sick, and she stared at him. 0, 50, or 100, Sharon. What will it be?" The silence stretched for nearly a minute. My wife appeared on the verge of being sick as she glanced up at me. "Bob, I'm incredibly sorry for everything and I urgently need to talk to you. But in response to your question, do you want to drive or should I?" Well, that caught me off guard. I never expected her to leave us for the other guy. I was certain she'd stay here all night trying to justify her actions. Bringing me to meet her jerk of a boyfriend did earn her some points, but she was still deep in the red. I grabbed my keys and trailed her to the car. Opening the door for her was just instinct, and it almost brought her to tears. As I backed out of the driveway, she glanced at me. "I really messed things up, didn't I?" she murmured. "Yes, Sharon, you really did," I replied, eyes fixed on the road. "What can I do to make it right?" she asked softly. I pondered for a moment. I had a couple of plans brewing. First and foremost, moving forward, I expect complete honesty. It's disappointing that I have to emphasize this, but it seems you've been withholding information or outright lying. Rebuilding trust will require more than just words. You'll need to demonstrate sincerity. I shouldn't bear the sole responsibility for repairing our trust. Another matter I shouldn't need to address, but I will. He is to be completely cut off from your life. If we're to remain together, you must refrain from any communication with him at work. No inquiries about his day, no socializing if he appears where you are, and definitely no acceptance of drinks or gifts. He is to receive no interaction from you whatsoever. Additionally, when we return tonight, I expect full disclosure from you, even if it's uncomfortable. I acknowledge my own neglect due to this project. But if there are issues between us, I need to hear them. Lastly, we need to schedule marriage counseling sessions. Feel free to choose the counselor. Perhaps Ron can recommend someone. However, this is dependent on certain conditions. As I finished speaking, her phone signaled a text message. She glanced down, her complexion growing even paler. "It's him, asking where I am," she whispered. I reached out for her phone, and without a word, she handed it over. Quietly, I scrolled through her messages, finding a couple of recent ones. Him. "Hey, I've booked a room with a jacuzzi. Maybe we can relax after dinner. Bring your bikini." Her. "You won't be able to get me drunk enough for that. I'm not bringing a bikini." Him. "We'll see. You know how you are when you're drunk. Maybe you won't need a bikini." And then just now, him. "Where are you? I have a glass of wine waiting for you." I replied, "Running a little late. I have a surprise for you." Him. "Ooh, you brought your bikini." Excellent. Handing the phone back to my wife, she read the texts and just hung her head. "You know he's not helping your situation, right? Just today's texts make it seem like you're planning to hook up with him tonight." "How much worse will it look if I scroll back further?" I said, fully aware of how bad it already seemed. "I suppose I should ask, do you consider your texts today as inappropriate flirting? Can you understand how these exchanges have shattered the trust I had in you?" I heard her sob. "Bob, I promise I only intended to have dinner tonight. I never intended to sleep with him." I couldn't resist. I stared at her as if she were foolish. "Did you plan on giving him your underwear after getting drunk and dancing intimately with him a few weeks ago?" I didn't think it was possible for her to become any paler. I was mistaken. "Sharon, we're almost there. You should probably touch up your makeup and think about what you're going to say to Luke. Oh, and don't drink the wine." She flipped down the visor and grabbed a tissue from the glove compartment. She began composing herself and ceased crying. As she started applying mascara, she asked in a calmer tone of voice, "Bob, I understand why you believe Luke manipulated me. Your perspective makes me question it too. But Bob, how could I have been so blind? Despite recent choices, I'm not naive. I've rejected more appealing and refined men than Luke. So why did he affect me?" "That's precisely why I struggle to trust your words, Sharon. You're a smart, attractive woman who should recognize this situation for what it is. That's why I can't help but wonder if you're willingly going along with it, I responded. Damn. And on top of that, I got too cozy with this guy at a bar and lied about having dinner with him tonight. No wonder you're angry and upset, she admitted, her color returning and her voice gaining strength. I messed up, and now I need to find a way to make things right. Thank you for giving me a chance, she said, leaning in for a kiss. But I turned my head at the last moment, letting it land on my cheek. I'm still not over this. Not by a long shot. She looked at me almost shocked. We're usually affectionate, and I hope we can return to that. What should I tell him? She inquired as we pulled into the restaurant parking lot. After finding a spot and turning off the engine, I glanced at her, feeling some of my anger rise to the surface. What do you want me to say? Sharon, our relationship is hanging by a thread because of your actions with this person. You and him have torn down a fundamental aspect of our marriage. Our daughter could be spending holidays with one of us each. I need you to realize that. Then, tell him whatever you feel like, I replied. She sat quietly for a moment before taking a shaky breath and opening the car door. As we approached the restaurant section of the hotel, she reached out as if to touch my arm. I didn't pull away, but I didn't welcome her touch either. We entered. Inside, a young woman with auburn hair stood behind a small kiosk. Welcome to TGI Fridays. Are there 2 in your party? She asked. Before I could respond, my wife spoke up. We're meeting someone here. They've already been seated, she said in a very business-like manner. Oh, okay, feel free to look around, the hostess replied. I wasn't familiar with the man's appearance, so I followed my wife's lead. She nudged me gently and gestured towards the back of the restaurant. A man sat there near the hotel entrance, engrossed in his phone. With determination, she approached his table, opting not to sit. Upon noticing her, he grinned widely, then registered her companion behind her. His smile faltered, his gaze sharpening when he saw me. Luke, meet my husband, Robert Morgan, she introduced. He has valid concerns about our relationship, which I've come to agree with. I've given him cause to doubt my fidelity for the first time in our marriage. I'm committed to rebuilding trust by severing ties with you completely. No calls, texts, or attempts at communication. I accept responsibility for letting things reach this point and choose to end our relationship. My husband is aware of my regrettable actions at the Red Horse Saloon. Tomorrow, I'll inform HR of the situation, making it clear that any non-work-related contact is unwelcome. Now, I'll be at the bar while my husband talks to you. With a sudden kiss, she turned towards me. I'm so sorry, she whispered, meeting my eyes briefly. As she headed to the bar, I couldn't help but admire her resolve. Things went smoother than I anticipated. Seating myself opposite the perturbed playboy, I found myself assessing him unconsciously. He sported dark hair, a slender frame, and impeccable attire, constituting what might be deemed attractive, though I've never been adept at appraising men. Despite being seated, he appeared roughly my height. His repeated glances at the wine glass on the table only served to confirm my suspicions. Now was the time for composure. Though I had a vague plan in mind, improvisation wasn't my forte. And here you thought the surprise was her in a bikini, I remarked, with a slight grin. Do you truly believe she's divulged everything? He retorted with a smirk. With him directly in front of me, I felt a sense of tranquility. This was a challenge I could tackle. Actually, I do. I've known that woman for a decade. Been married to her for 8. I reckon I understand her better than some pretty boy who's been chasing after her for 3 months. I maintained the smile. The waiter came over and asked me to order drinks. I chose a double Johnny Walker Black with ice. She's a master at this, he remarked with a grin, glancing at the wine he ordered for her. Of course she's a craftsman, I replied with a grin. But I doubt you're talking based on personal experience. Do you want proof? He was joking. He was clearly trying to provoke me. Instead of reacting aggressively, I grinned. You don't have any evidence. If she were with you to that extent, you wouldn't have to put something in her drink. What kind of remedy do predation lovers prefer these days? I had a hunch, but his shocked expression confirmed it. He recoiled when I leaned closer. Now I was furious. You despicable little coward. I should beat you up right now, but I don't want to end up in jail. I offered my wife 3 options, and now I'm offering 3 of them to you. I put my finger to his nose. 1, you leave immediately. You apologize to my wife now and quit your job tomorrow. I promise I won't come after you. Then, you get out of town. I held up a second finger. 2, you go to the cops and confess to spiking my wife's drink. Serve your time, and stay away from her. I'll be watching, but I won't come after you. Then, you get out of town. I held up a third finger. 3, we sign up for boxing classes. In 4 weeks, we step into the ring. We'll sign injury waivers, and won't leave until one of us is unconscious. When you wake up, you stay away from my wife. Then, you get out of town. The waiter dropped off my scotch as I finished. I took a long drink, savoring the burn. Time to regain my composure. You must think I'm an idiot. Why would I go along with any of those options? He sneered. I gave him what I hoped was a menacing grin. Because you don't want to spend the rest of your miserable life constantly looking over your shoulder. Every time you walk to your car in the dark, you're going to wonder if one of my friends and I are going to end up with a baseball bat, ready to do something terrible. Every time you open the door of your house, you won't know if any of us are waiting for you to tie you to a chair. Every time you go to a bar, you're going to worry that one of my buddies or I will put something in your drink. You wouldn't do anything like that, you're just a teddy bear. At least that's what your wife told me after I was intimate with her last night. The color began to return to his face. I took another sip of whiskey. I reached into my pocket and turned on the voice recording function on my phone. I hope he catches the next few sentences. I really should have planned better. You were planning to give illegal substances and take advantage of my wife tonight, asshole. Are you willing to risk a life full of pain and suffering by betting that I won't carry out my threats? It's time to go fishing. The banned substances were just to cheer her up before I brought my friends. We were going to make her feel at home tonight. My composure was gone. I managed to grab him by the collar with my left hand and pull him towards me. Since I was sitting, I couldn't hit with my right fist with much force. But I still didn't please him. You're a jerk. I'm going to call the police, he shouted, holding his nose. Come on, asshole. I would like them to check the wine left in this glass for illegal substances and listen to the recording where you admit it, I shouted back. Less than 10 minutes later, the cops began investigating the incident. Apparently, 2 state troopers went out for a lunch break on the subway across the street. They took my statement and took the remaining wine and wine glass for analysis. When they searched the hatch, they found a bag of white powder. He asked for a lawyer and refused to say anything else. They listened to my recording and took my mobile phone as evidence. It was difficult, but it was possible to make out what Luke was saying about illegal substances and a planned gang crime. It was almost 4 a.m. when Sharon and I were able to leave the police station. After she testified, one of the cops spent almost 15 minutes telling her what a great guy I was and how I saved her. By the end of it all, she was completely shattered. Luke remained in police custody. We used her mobile phone to quickly explain the situation to my parents. They were understanding and promised to take care of Casey. They decided to take her to the zoo. She should have liked it. After driving into the garage and turning off the car, we both just looked at each other. She unbuckled her seatbelt and hugged me through the console. I let her cry on my shoulder for about a minute before gently pushing her away. Sharon, we still need to talk, but it's late, and we need to go to bed. We'll both call work tomorrow and spend the whole day together to think about our next steps. Does this sound like a plan? Yes, Bob, sleeping is wonderful. In a low voice, she asked, Can I sleep in the same bed with you? Of course, baby. The next morning, I woke up pressed against her. I was thinking about how we ended up where we were last night and hoping that everything might be okay. We had to talk a few more times before I could decide on something. Get up and get ready. We're not going to have a serious conversation on an empty stomach, I said. In the end, we took a shower together, keeping it purely functional to speed up the preparation. Just a little bit. I wasn't ready for intimacy until we got out into the fresh air. We had breakfast at IHOP, chatting about Grace and how much fun she and my parents must be having. We managed to keep a casual conversation going. After drinking the last cup of coffee, we paid the bill and went home. We sat down at the kitchen table and looked at each other. Okay, I think I'll start, I said. I think you can see now what a bad person Luke is, so I'm not going to stop there. He claimed that you were close to him and called me a teddy bear. Is any of this true? No. The furthest I went with him was that terrible night at the Red Horse. I understand how terrible my actions were that night, but it didn't go beyond that, she replied. How can I believe this? You lied about seeing him last night, and you lied about not telling me about that night at the bar and about your relationship with him in general. I felt it was time to put everything on the table. I've been racking my brain trying to figure out how to prove it, and I think I've got an idea. What about a polygraph test? What is it? She asked. A polygraph test? I had to smile a little. Do you mean a polygraph test, a lie detector? She nodded. Yes. Set up an appointment and ask me anything you want. Just let me know the time and place. The sincerity in her expression was incredibly endearing. I know those tests aren't completely reliable, but I'd feel much better if she was telling the truth. I'll see what I can do. It might take some time to arrange, but it's a good idea, more than I would have expected, I replied. She smiled. Okay, that's a good start, and we'll discuss the extent of your affair later. But my next question is the most important one. It's the one that hurts the most and has the biggest impact on our relationship. How do we move forward? I can understand that you were ashamed and didn't tell me about the panty incident. I don't like it, but I can understand it. I have a hard time with the fact that you got close to another guy without telling me, but if you thought it was just a work friendship, I can kind of see that. What I can't understand, and what makes me want to walk away to avoid getting hurt again, is when you told me you were going out with the girls and then met him for dinner. A 100% direct lie. Forget the consequences. You broke my heart when you said you were going out with the girls. I knew my eyes were watering. I couldn't help it. Bob, all I can do is explain my mindset at the time. First, I want to apologize for lying to you about everything. When you started this project, for the first time in our relationship, I felt like I was in second place. I am not blaming you or your work. I understand why you took it on and why it was so important to you. I'm just sharing how I felt. I started feeling down, and then Vicky's sister said something I couldn't shake off. She suggested looking for romance elsewhere. I never interpreted that as a suggestion to cheat on you. I thought it meant that while you were busy with this project, it would be okay to seek what I needed elsewhere. That's where Luke came in. I didn't fully realize it, but he was fulfilling my need to feel special. He asked about my day, my kid, and my family. We talked about hobbies I enjoyed. Essentially, when we talked, it was all about me. She paused and studied my face for a reaction. I don't think I gave her one. When Vicky criticized me about what happened at lunchtime, I realized what I was doing. I was using Luke to get what I felt I couldn't get from you. Honestly, I did try to cool things off. At the time, I thought he was just being a friend, but I wanted to make things right with you. On the night things got out of hand, I didn't invite him or his friends. I arrived early, and they showed up before the rest of the girls. Luke was buying drinks for everyone, including me. I ended up getting as drunk as I've ever been since we've been together. I did some stupid and shameful things, which you already know about. But then we had an amazing intimacy, which confused me even more. How could I act like that without you there, and then have it turn out to be so incredible with you later? She got up and took a glass of water. After drinking half of it, she sat down again and continued. Then it was the turn of dealing with the consequences. I knew you'd be furious about what I'd done, and it was only fair. If you got drunk and kissed another woman on the dance floor, I'd be ready to follow you. I even knew it was going to get worse because we had such a passionate time afterwards. You'd think I was thinking about someone else. And I made another mistake. I tried to use my friend, Luke, to hide it. And, presumably, he succeeded. He made sure that I knew about it. So now I owe it to my friend who invites me to dinner only on the evening when my regular friends can't join. I still feel lonely because I don't think you'll be home until late, so in a moment of stupidity, I ruined everything. And I'm really sorry. Our relationship has always been based on mutual trust. I've ruined everything. Tears were streaming down her face, even though she wasn't sobbing. Oh shit. I stood up and hugged her. I kissed her hard. Pulling away, I had to say something. We haven't achieved that yet, and it's going to take some time. But if you're 100% ready, then so am I. Sharon and I attended counseling for a while. Discussing my issues helped me overcome them. The main takeaway for me was that even though communication was a strong suit when we first got together, we still needed to work on it. The counselor also recommended that Sharon be tested for hormonal imbalance. At 31 years old, it was a bit early to be concerned, but not impossible. After a few tests and changing her birth control, she felt better. Unfortunately, I can't say we're back to where we were, but we're back to a good place. The polygraph test confirmed she was truthful about all the tough questions I asked. As for the lingering doubts I have about the accuracy of those tests, I can live with that. I did end up signing up for boxing lessons. Sharon got interested in the self-defense classes offered there, and Thursday Girls Bar Night turned into Thursday Girls Self-Defense Night. Sharon decided to enroll us in martial arts classes. She's a natural, and I struggle to keep up with her. Sparring together has become the best foreplay we've discovered. The project was completed 6 weeks ahead of schedule and within budget. As a result, my company entered the top league in terms of government contracts. Although I was offered the position of vice president, I declined due to excessive travel expenses. Instead, I led the creation of the Special Projects Department, which I now lead. This promotion was accompanied by the appearance of a new office and an assistant manager. My new assistant is attractive and charming, and we have a good working relationship. Most of the $38,000 bonus from my initial project went to the Casey College Fund, and some was set aside for a week-long all-inclusive vacation with my wife. Upon my return, my parents were looking forward to our daughter's return. I was charged with disorderly conduct for battery, and I believe that the money and time were well spent. Meanwhile, Luke was sentenced to 3 to 5 years in prison for attempted rape and possession of prohibited substances. Luke was also attacked near his car, although not by me. Apparently, one of his victim's brothers caught up with him. This man received 2 to 3 years in prison for assault. I transfer $50 a month to his account at the prison cash desk.